Good morning,
morning.
all of you in the sanctuary, but also the people online. This is Grace. I'm Ron. Jerry has just introduced us, and Grace will start off our 25-minute talk on the 7 levels of living applied to leadership.
Good morning. Welcome everybody to our home in Europe. I'm picturing your faces. It's very special to be here. Thank you for letting us join you. Every one of us who has been attracted to the work of Paul Solomon has an interesting story to tell about how that played out, how we got here. And Paul used to say that there was usually magic involved, and he advised us to believe in magic. It's the type of magic that the universe uses to attract to us whomever and whatever we need to fulfill soul purpose and to share real love. As far as my story, in 1974, I was living on a kibbutz in Israel, and at that point, I read the original Paul Solomon Tapes book, which was life-changing for me because it indicated life direction. My life was never the same after that. Within a year, I arrived in Virginia Beach and showed up at the fellowship and was gung-ho, all ready to begin helping create more publications from Paul's lectures and readings. But in the early days of the fellowship, things usually didn't go that smoothly or that predictably. And instead, my first task in the fellowship, a group of people were moving Paul, who was out of town, Paul Solomon, who was out of town, from his old apartment to his new apartment. And I was asked to stay behind at the old apartment and clean it up. So in true mystery school form, my first job at the fellowship was to scrub Paul's toilet. Come forward about 15 years, in the late 80s, Ron Durand was working as a resident doctor at a hospital in Haarlem in the Netherlands, where he's from. And he decided to attend a Paul Winter concert in a Gothic basilica in Rotterdam. Guess who else was on the lineup that night? Paul Solomon would be speaking on the search for a modern day mystery school. Ron hadn't heard of Paul, was only going to hear Paul Winter. And he left work that night, rushed to get there on time, got there late, ended up in the foyer of the church, unable to even get into the nave. He could hear the man's voice speaking, but he couldn't understand the words. But he says that the sound of Paul's voice made him cry. So afterwards, he pushed his way to the front and got close to Paul and grabbed Paul's hand. And Paul looked him in the eye and did kind of a mind melt thing and said one thing: "Why don't you come to Virginia Beach?"
Right.
So it was another one of those magical, life-changing moments where life direction is indicated. I think we've all been there. We all had that moment where life as you know it is turned upside down.
Yeah, little did we know.
Little did we know. So Ron came to Virginia Beach and
took part in the first seminary program in 1991.
That's where we met.
Where we met.
And we had our first conversation in the sanctuary, where some of you are sitting right now, which is cool. For the past 3 decades, Ron and I have continued to love and appreciate and still learn from all of Paul's material, the ancient wisdom, which he shared so incredibly effectively. And we've continued to try to share his work with an expanding audience. And for us, it was mainly a mainstream audience. Same message, same ancient wisdom, just different, just whatever words worked for whoever's in front of us, for them to best understand it. For the past 2 years, we've been compiling Paul's lectures into 7 books, a series of books called Paul Solomon on the 7 Levels of Living. The 7 levels relate to what Paul called energy centers, 7 energy centers that we operate from while we're in the body. He also called these energy centers churches, congregations of worship. And he said that they are either worshiping their source or they are not. And what that means is that each of us throughout our lifetimes, in every moment, we're either choosing to express love and appreciation or we're choosing to express fear. We have 2 books finished, 2 are published. We have 5 more to go. Right now we're working on book 3. Ron and I see our work on these books as our way of contributing to the future of the fellowship and the future of Paul's legacy. But truthfully, a big motivator for me is that 20 years from now, I'll likely be gone. And I would like for each of my grandchildren to have a set of these books so that they can at least have the option, if they want to explore this amazing work of Paul Solomon's. It's been, I can't imagine not having known Paul Solomon. I think the cleverest thing I did in my lifetime was to stumble my way onto his path. And I still listen to his lectures every morning. I work on the books, the 7 books daily. I think we both still sit around and have these intense discussions where we use Paul's words as guidance and growth. It's been a huge privilege and blessing for me to have been involved, to be involved in the fellowship, to have known Paul, and to know all of you, to work alongside you, even at a distance, in this special work, and to have you as friends. So thank you so much.
You're done. It's emotional for her, very emotional, as you can tell. My part of the story is different. After coming back from Virginia Beach, that was in 1992, 93. I worked for a little bit more, like maybe 2 or 3 years as a medical doctor, but gave up on that because it wasn't really about people. It was about running a factory most of the time. And I started working as a boardroom coach, as a management and leadership trainer, which I've done for more than 25 years now. And of course, that's a very different field. And talking about leadership and talking about Paul, no matter where you turn it, leadership, of course, always starts about what kind of example do I want to set. And as you all know, first level of everything in Paul's teachings, 7 terraces, Paul's work and all that was all about I am, and therefore about do I expect to be changed or not. Well, I meet a lot of leaders, and whether you're leading yourself as a single individual, or if you've only got a few kids or a family that you're in charge of, or perhaps a school or a group of coworkers that you're supposed to lead, if you're not excited about what you're doing, then it's going to be tough. Paul used to say, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't really matter how you get there. So level 1 is always about setting goals. Level 1 is all about I am, and I'm expecting really to make a contribution or to make a change. Now, if as a leader for my personal life or the people around me, I don't have a certain vision, a certain mission, a certain idea of where I want to go, then how in the world will I convince others? There's, I think you looked it up yesterday, 1.5 billion, 2.5 billion hits. She typed in the word leadership in Google. So there was a 2.5 billion hit thing that came out, and there's so much out there about, you know, the 3 habits this, the 5 habits that, the 12 this, and whatever. It's confusing. So for me, to make it very simple, leadership for me is all about how do I inspire, how do I motivate, how do I get a group of talented people together and make them arrive at a shared destination. Otherwise, it's just me going there and nobody's following me. So in effect, leadership is more about followership, because a leader without followers is not a leader, truly. It's just a lonely nut out there in the distance that is yelling all kinds of stuff and maybe not being in charge of anything at all. So the first thing to do is to get excited about your message. Not only that, to also believe in that you have the power to convey that message, and also the power of the others that they will actually get inspired and execute that message. Because if you don't believe in those who are listening to your message, then your leadership is not very valid at all. So whether you talk to yourself, your family, your husband, the group of people you're in charge with, it starts with setting a certain goal that you would like to achieve or would you like to go to. And then, of course, if you progress to the second level, where it's all about transformation and regeneration and letting things go, leaders and change, it's the essence of every day, that you have to change things and that you have to let certain procedures and methodologies and structures as they are, you let them go. If you want to open up a new procedure and a new way of working, then you first have to, you know, empty your shelf, as Paul used to say it. You have to get rid of the old stuff. That's easier said than done, as we all know. We look at habits, belief systems, and all that. It's all about transforming blocks. It's all about, you know, what is it that I have in my life right now that I'd like to clear up and like to compost and make something new out of. And then, of course, the I am new level, the next level after I am and I have, and after I have and I can now relate to others, is about the change itself. And like I said, if I have a compelling vision, if I have a story, and if I can create a burning platform for people to feel the heat that this current situation is not working anymore, then they might get inspired to move and to come with me. And again, whether it's just me or myself or just my family or my whole group of people that I am in charge of, I have to set that new course and direction, and I need to point out where is it that we're going. And that initiation of change, the expression of that new life, is something I need to believe in. And of course, if we all, as a group of people, are believing in that same idea and move along, then there will be enough critical mass to move forward. Otherwise, there's just not enough for us to go forward, and the change is probably not sustainable. Now, for me, the most interesting part, of course, is the fourth level, the level of I love, the level of integration, of finding cause. And Paul talked a lot about that, and actually only about that. We all know about the inner self-helper, the inner teacher, your inner self, whatever you call it, your conscience, your guidance. There's many words for that. But the way that relates to me and all the years that I've been training leaders and CEOs and all that is basically the question of, I always start my programs with, who do you think is a great leader? Who do you admire as a leader? And of course, people come up with people like Obama or Mandela or, you know, Gandhi and those kind of examples. But it's the aspects of those people that people name that are the intriguing part. Of course, it's their enigmatic approach, it's their charisma, it's their inspiration, it's their vision. It's all these wonderful, wonderful words. But still, it's pretty vague. And to make it more personal, I ask all these people in my trainings and in my programs, so what is it in you then that people should follow? Or why in the world should people follow you? That's not an easy question. It's actually a very difficult question. If you cannot name what it is in you that you should follow, or your kids should follow, or your coworkers should follow, then why would I get inspired? Why would I get motivated to follow you? What exactly is it then? And I think everybody has its own personal perception and ideas about what that is. And as we've been raised in the fellowship, we all have a certain way of expressing that. You know, we've called it many different things, but it is that quality in you, that small inner voice, that conscience, or that inner self-helper, or inner teacher, or your guidance, or the Christ self, whatever you call that, is the voice that you'd like to follow. Now, people that are truly inspirational to me are very strongly connected to that kind of authenticity, that kind of connection. And they're not talking about EQ or IQ or even MQ as in moral. It's all about, you know, getting in touch with who you truly are. And if who you truly are within brings out the best in you, and therefore the best in others, then you have connected your inner core with your outer expressions. So for me, that's the whole point of the whole training, that your soul design or your inner purpose comes out in your outer expressions. And that's, of course, not often that leaders can actually do this, because they're in an environment or in corporate structures where that is not always the best thing to do or even appreciated. So the only way then again, for me, if you move on to the next level of perception and of consolidation and of claiming ownership, on the fifth level, whose voice am I following then? Is it my personality voice? Is it my my own belief systems, or is it actually that which I'm trying to channel? That quality that would be the one quality that I would like to be in charge of my life, in the way I act, you know. So the whole idea of claiming that kind of ownership, to then consolidate that to your perceptions in the area of how would I do the only right thing that is appropriate here right now to do, that I know is there, that I know is in me, that I can actually access and listen to. Or do I just, you know, forget about that and do what I always do? Because in the end, it's all about the realization of, you know, full circle. I am again on the seventh level, about the whole being one thing. And the question then, of course, is, am I here to contribute? Or did I come into this experience to take something away? Which for me is the hallmark of a true leader. And to round up my part of my 2 cents of this experience is that you can always tell when a person enters the room, what kind of energy does he convey? Why is he there? Some people come in and have an attitude of, oh, here I am, you know, and it's all about them. And it's a turnoff. And other people walk into a place and have an attitude of, oh, there you are. And that's a very, very different experience for me. So are you there to contribute, or are you there to take away? And that's as simple as that for me. And what the fellowship has done for us, and especially for me, especially my relationship also with Grace, is that it is mostly all about what can I contribute? Because as you can understand, being in a bicultural, bicontinental, by whatever relationship we have in many different areas, is hugely challenging. And apart from all the awards and all rewards and problems. Yeah, that's first world problems for sure. And yet they can be intense. Grace just spent 6 months in the States. So, and I stay here to keep the ship afloat. And that's the price we pay. And, you know, it's again, how do you look at things? I can say, oh my God, how horrible. I have to do 6 months without her. And the other 6 months while she's here, we fight and we argue. That's not our life, you know. When she's here, we enjoy. And when she's not here, I anticipate. So it's all a matter of perspective, which is the whole idea about the whole leadership issue as well. So the books, Grace is extremely dedicated. She writes hours every single day. The work, basically Janice Nicely's work, maybe you should share a little bit about that, Grace.
We're running out of time.
Running out of time?
They can read it. The story of Janice Nicely, where we got the material for these books,
is in the books.
Is in the editor's note of book 2.
It is. It is. And she's been doing this for years, and I cannot imagine the dedication. We're at 20 minutes right now, so
okay.
I think we're fine.
Yeah. I could say one more thing about leadership.
Okay, please.
Haven't written this down or thought it out totally, but one thing, it's something that is already going into book 4. So we're also sort of writing all the books at once, or compiling all we're not writing them, Paul. It's Paul's words, but we're compiling them. And this is something that will go into book 4. And Paul, I believe, like, we tend to look at everything first, how it is in the inner world, and then how we can use it to affect the outer world. And this idea of leadership on the inside, as an inside job, Paul did this, he described it as getting all the, like causing all the parts of yourself to come together, leading all the parts of yourself to come together under the leadership of higher intelligence, source, Christ consciousness. And he uses the Christ's first miracle at Cana to explain this, when Mary comes, and Mary, mother of the source, the inspiration, he calls it, comes and says to Jesus, they've run out of wine. Paul says she's talking about everything stalled. I can't get anything moving. I can't go forward. There's not enough commitment. And Jesus says, well, what's that got to do with me? It's not my hour yet. And Paul adds that what he's saying is that this body doesn't belong to me yet. I haven't, the 12 parts of this body, this mind, this personality, the talents, the characteristics, it hasn't been turned over to me yet.
It's okay.
So
that
was pretty cool.
You have to get a grip on this energy.
So
That's funny.
Mary turns to the 12 servants, which is all that stuff I just named, and says, whatever he tells you to do it.
Yeah.
And that's when the commitment to leadership happens. Yeah, so
nice.
cool. So cool.
And again, it's in the end all about perspective, of course, as well. How do you see things? Do you see it as a huge challenge? Do you see it as a blessing? We all know this. Yeah. And that, for me, even started 30 years ago when people started to ask me, even when I was still working as a medical doctor, they would ask me, I don't love my wife anymore. What should I do? And then I would usually say, then you should go home and love her, which sounded pretty silly, and they would laugh at me. But I didn't understand that if I decide to see Grace as my queen, she will become that for me, even if she's not always. It's my perspective.
Yeah, you just reminded me something Paul said. In a relationship, in a partnership, you relate with the person as if that person is God, and you relate with the person as if you are God. Exactly. How would you act?
Exactly.
How would that?
And it's actually freaky how powerful we are as creative beings. Talk about manifestation, especially. That will become reality, because the way I see,
we're creating it all.
You have no choice in the matter. If I treat you like such, then you will become that for me, and you have no choice in it, and that will change reality. But it does involve the concept of complete total responsibility. There's no room for victim consciousness in that. You cannot say, oh, if it were only for that the customers were nicer, or if the traffic wasn't so bad, or if my children would go to bed on time, or whatever it is. There's no excuse. There's no excuse to not be your absolute best in any given interaction you ever have with somebody. And Grace and I had to learn also that we don't have a relationship. We have two, and hers is a very different one than mine. The relationship I have with her is very different than she has with me. So, and actually, I don't even have a relationship with Grace. I have a relationship with what I feel and think,
your beliefs
and all
about
that
me.
about her. So I could have that with anybody. I just choose to project it on her because she feels and looks and smells better to me. That's basically it. All right.
All right.
Okay, so we're at 25 minutes. I wish we had been there live, and that would have been our preference to have a live back and forth with you.
Interact, but Jerry twisted our arm to.
It's all your fault,
tape
Jerry. you wanted it taped.
This is
our first shot at taping it.
Yeah.
We've never done this together. We enjoyed it. I hope you did too, and we wish
Thank
you a
you
great
guys.
time at the gathering.
Love you.
We
Bye.
love you too.